Louisville, Kentucky, 1942. A boy named Cassius Marcellus Clay, Jr. took his first breath in a world divided by color lines and prejudice. No one could have predicted that this child would grow to become the most recognizable face in sports history, Muhammad Ali, the man who would float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. By 1964, the young boxer had shocked the world by defeating Sonny Liston for the heavyweight championship. His speed was unprecedented, his footwork mesmerizing, and his mouth ran even faster than his feet. "I am the greatest," he would declare, and few could argue with the evidence before them. If this story has made you feel something, no matter how small, don't leave without giving back. Comment and tell me where you're watching this video from, and subscribe to the channel. But our story doesn't focus on those glorious, celebrated moments that filled the history books. Instead, we turn to 1970, when Muhammad Ali was 31 years old. The world knew him as the outspoken champion who had sacrificed 3 prime years of his career by refusing to be drafted into the Vietnam War. "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong," he had famously stated, standing on principle even as it cost him his title and millions of dollars. Now reinstated and fighting his way back to the top, Ali sat alone in his dressing room at Madison Square Garden. The roar of 20,000 fans penetrated the thin walls, but Ali's mind was elsewhere. Tonight's opponent wasn't a household name. He wasn't a stepping stone to a title shot. He was something far more complicated, a mirror reflecting a path Ali might have taken. Tears welled in Ali's eyes as he wrapped his own hands, refusing assistance from his corner men. Give me time," he had told them. This wasn't just another fight. The man waiting for him in the ring was Ernie Shavers, a boxer with tremendous power but terrible luck. A man whose name had been all but erased from the public consciousness after a series of devastating losses and poor management. Ali had met Shavers years earlier at an exhibition in Cleveland. They had sparred, laughed, shared dreams of championship glory. But while Ali's star had risen, Shavers had drifted into obscurity, taking dangerous fights for pennies, his body bearing the scars of 100 battles fought in half-empty arenas. "I could have been him," Ali whispered to himself. "If things had gone different, that could have been me out there, forgotten." Ernie Shavers was born in Alabama during the Great Depression, one of 10 children in a sharecropping family. His childhood was defined by cotton fields and calloused hands. Boxing hadn't been a dream, but a necessity, a way to put food on the table when the crops failed and the landlord came calling. By 1965, Shavers had compiled an impressive amateur record and turned professional with high hopes. Boxing writers noted his exceptional punching power, some comparing him to former champion Sonny Liston. "Shavers hits like a mule kicking," one trainer had commented after watching him knock out 3 sparring partners in a single afternoon. But Shavers lacked the charisma and business savvy that had propelled Ali to international fame. While Ali had surrounded himself with skilled advisors and crafted a media persona that transcended sports, Shavers had fallen victim to unscrupulous managers who arranged mismatched fights that damaged his record and reputation. When Ali had stood before the world refusing military service, risking imprisonment and sacrificing his title, Shavers had quietly accepted his draft notice. He served 2 years in Vietnam, returning with shrapnel in his leg and nightmares that awakened him screaming in the dark. The boxing world had moved on without him. Now, at 34 years old, Shavers was considered a journeyman, a fighter brought in to build the records of rising stars. His once promising career had devolved into a series of paycheck fights, each one leaving him more damaged than the last. Fight fans had largely forgotten the man who once knocked out 5 consecutive opponents in the first round. In his shabby dressing room across the arena from Ali's, Shavers sat alone. No entourage, no reporters clamoring for quotes, just an aging fighter with aching joints and fading dreams. He knew why he'd been chosen as Ali's opponent. Everyone expected him to lose, to be another stepping stone on Ali's journey back to the championship. But Shavers had one advantage the others didn't. He had nothing left to lose. His career was already in ruins, his name already forgotten. Tonight, he planned to empty his soul in the ring, to throw every ounce of pain and disappointment into his punches. If this was to be his last significant fight, he would make it memorable. "They'll remember me after tonight," Shavers promised himself as he laced up his worn boxing shoes. "One way or another, they'll remember." The lights of Madison Square Garden cast harsh shadows as Muhammad Ali made his entrance, his white robe gleaming under the spotlights. The crowd erupted, thousands rising to their feet to catch a glimpse of the man who had transcended his sport to become a cultural icon. Ali raised his gloved hands, acknowledging their adoration, but his usual pre-fight theatrics were notably absent. Ernie Shavers entered to polite applause, many in attendance checking their programs to remind themselves who this opponent was. The announcer's introduction of Ali lasted nearly 2 minutes, filled with accolades and achievements. Shavers' introduction took less than 20 seconds. As the two men met at center ring for the referee's instructions, Ali didn't taunt or intimidate, as he typically would. Instead, he placed a hand on Shavers' shoulder, leaning in to whisper something that caused the forgotten fighter to straighten his spine and nod with newfound determination. The bell rang, and expectations were immediately shattered. Shavers didn't charge forward recklessly as the washed-up fighter he was presumed to be. Instead, he circled methodically, cutting off the ring with surprising dexterity. Ali's famous footwork seemed less effective than usual, as though he was deliberately limiting his movement. In the third round, Shavers connected with a thunderous right hand that sent sweat spraying from Ali's head. The crowd gasped collectively. Ali retreated to the ropes, employing his rope-a-dope strategy, but Shavers refused to exhaust himself with wild punches. He picked his shots carefully, landing body blows that echoed through the arena. By the 6th round, both men were bleeding, Ali from a cut above his left eye, Shavers from his nose and mouth. The fight had transformed from a presumed showcase into a war of attrition. Between rounds, Ali's trainer, Angelo Dundee, demanded to know what was happening. "Fight your fight," he shouted, but Ali simply shook his head. "I'm fighting the only fight that matters," Ali responded cryptically. As the middle rounds progressed, something extraordinary began to happen. The crowd, initially there to worship Ali, started cheering for Shavers. His courage in the face of overwhelming odds, his refusal to be dismissed, resonated with the Madison Square Garden faithful. "Shavers, Shavers," the chant began, growing louder with each passing round. In the 11th round, Ali was knocked down for just the 3rd time in his professional career. A perfectly timed uppercut from Shavers sent him crashing to the canvas. The referee began his count, but Ali was up at 8, nodding respectfully toward his opponent. When the 15th round began, both men were exhausted, their faces swollen, their bodies battered, yet they fought with renewed vigor, as though understanding that these final 3 minutes would define how this night would be remembered. In the closing seconds, they stood toe-to-toe in center ring, trading punches with abandon, neither man willing to take a backward step. The final bell rang, and in a moment that would become boxing legend, Ali and Shavers embraced, holding each other up as much as holding each other in respect. The crowd stood as one, applauding not just the famous champion, but the forgotten man who had refused to be forgotten any longer. The judges' scorecards revealed a split decision victory for Muhammad Ali. As the announcement echoed through Madison Square Garden, Ali immediately walked to Shavers' corner, taking his opponent's hand and raising it above both their heads. a gesture that spoke volumes. The crowd roared their approval, understanding they had witnessed something more meaningful than a mere boxing match. In the post-fight press conference, reporters clustered around Ali, hungry for quotes from the victor. But Ali, defying convention once again, insisted that Shavers join him at the microphone. "You're all asking the wrong man about courage," Ali told the assembled media. "This man fought not just me tonight, but he fought against a system that tries to throw away fighters when they're not winning championships. He fought against everyone who said he was finished. And from where I was standing, taking his punches, let me tell you, Ernie Shavers is far from finished." The next morning, newspaper headlines across America told the story not of Ali's victory, but of Shavers' remarkable performance. Sports Illustrated would later call it the resurrection at the Garden, devoting their cover story not to the famous champion, but to the man who had entered the ring as a footnote and left it as a legend. For Shavers, everything changed after that night. Boxing promoters who had ignored his calls for years now sought him out. Exhibition opportunities in Europe and Asia materialized. A biography was commissioned. The financial security that had eluded him throughout his career finally became reality. But the most significant change came 6 months later, when Ali opened a boxing gym in Detroit dedicated to training veterans returning from Vietnam. The name above the door, Shavers Ali Academy of Boxing. Together, the two former opponents created a program that combined physical training with psychological support, helping hundreds of veterans transition back to civilian life. At the gym's opening ceremony, a reporter asked Ali why he had seemingly held back during their famous fight, why he hadn't employed his superior speed and skill to finish Shavers quickly. Ali smiled that familiar, enigmatic smile. "Hey, some fights ain't about winning," he said quietly. "Some fights are about making sure nobody gets left behind. The real victory that night wasn't on any scorecard. It was making sure a good man got the respect he always deserved." Years later, when Ali's Parkinson's disease had silenced his famous voice and slowed his legendary movements, it was Ernie Shavers who visited him regularly, reading him letters from fans and recounting stories from their boxing days. Their friendship, forged in 16 rounds of combat, endured until Ali's final days. In his eulogy at Ali's funeral, Shavers spoke with tears streaming down his weathered face. "The world knew him as the greatest, but I knew him as the man who saw me when I was invisible. He could have taken my dignity that night for his own glory. Instead, he shared his light so others could see me too. That wasn't just greatness, that was love." The true legacy of that fight wasn't recorded in boxing statistics or championship records. It lived in the hundreds of forgotten fighters who found new purpose at the Shavers Ali Academy, in the veterans who rediscovered their worth through the program they created, and in the enduring truth that Ali had demonstrated: real champions lift others even as they climb. If you've made it this far and felt every word, don't leave without subscribing. I tell these stories with my heart in my hand to reach people like you who feel, who get emotional, who live. If this truly touched you, give back, comment, subscribe. Come be part of this family with me until the next video.